Hello and welcome to the NothingNothing Aftershow report on the American Song Contest 2022. It's now been 2 mornings since the finale aired. The finale aired on Monday and today is Wednesday. So, just so you know that's 2 days apart. So, I've had some time to gestate and think about my thoughts, and I've come to some realizations and some thoughts about the future. So, let's just start with the personal stuff first, and then we'll get to what I thought about the show in general and what I think it needs to do. So, let us begin with some realities that I've been unaware of that I've now since picked up on since launching the contest. First up is the fact about K-pop's popularity. I thought it wasn't that popular, but apparently I've been way off. And with Alexa's pretty dominant win on Monday, it pretty much made it clear to me that I have been way off on that opinion. So I've now learned my lesson, and I understand the whole concept of K-pop and stands now. Secondly, was the realization that country is apparently not as popular as it used to be. When I was a kid, country used to be a lot more popular with Taylor Swift and Kenny Chesney and stuff, but apparently after watching the song contest, apparently country is fading out. Or it's becoming very sectionalized to a point where it's not popular enough to be voted by the public. And then the third personal thing I've learned is that apparently name does not always mean success on a contest. Because I've come into this knowing about Eurovision and the fact that both ABBA and Celine Dion have had great careers from it after their performances on it. But Micheal Bolton came on, and I expected him to at least be higher. But when it came to the finale, he wasn't even in the top 10. He wasn't even in the top 5. And he had one of the better songs, in my opinion. So maybe maybe I've learned I need to reconsider that maybe anybody that's not in the current relevance musically, i.e., say K-pop, dark pop, rap, so on. If you're not in the current popularity sounding chart, whatever, your chances are slim. And maybe this is something I've learned and I didn't realize that's an American problem. But in Eurovision, this can get away with it. But, continuing on. And then the fourth thing I've learned is that apparently my music taste does not match with the times. So when I made my top 10 list, you probably, if you compare it now, you'll realize I'm way off. I had Micheal Bolton at number 3, and I had a little bit of a bit of both at 2, and I was way off. I was more in line with the jury, but compared to the voting public, I wasn't even close, other than getting Alexa right. So I've learned now that my opinion does not match the voting public, and I match the jury a lot better, in my personal opinions. And now let's get to the things about the contest I think that could be improved. Let's start with the obvious. Make a better goddamn trophy. Or make sure it isn't broken by the time the performer actually is able to get it. I get it's a Eurovision thing where the two trophies have been broken back in 2009 and one was accidentally dropped by a presenter. So I get it's in Eurovision context. But for our contest, for our purposes, or for my purposes personally, let's make a trophy that doesn't break. That way so they can actually have a trophy to take home. And get rid of the commercials or cut down the commercials because God, it took forever for every single one of those episodes, and if there is not a good song listing selection, especially in the qualifiers, where this was really bad, it gets boring quick. You gotta get the commercials need to be cut down, rearranged, or so on, something. And then the interval act, which they actually had in the final, that, well, I forgot to mention, and I apologize, but there was an interval act. Jimmy Allen's new song was not the pick for an interval act. Sorry. I get this was the first edition, so they couldn't use the previous year's winner, but you could have done something better. Not Jimmy Allen. I like Jimmy Allen, but this was not the time for him. No. They need to speed it up a little bit. The show was running a little long. They can cut it down to an hour and a half, probably, and just get rid of the bonuses stuff, like the bloopers and stuff. Even though I like the bloopers, personally, but the focus on the show needs to be the songs. It's not about everything else around it, in the end. I also believe that, personally, there was I think they need to reweigh the points scale that they used in the finale, because I think the jury and the polling public should have been half and half. Going 3-1 was not the smart idea in the end, because that pretty much gave a runaway to Alexa. And while runaways are good, and that indicates that, and while it indicates that the people voted, the reality is, when you look at it, some people's opinions will never line up with Alexa's. That Alexa was the winner. So, if the jury had been more evenly weighed in the final, it may have worked out better, or it would have been less of a runaway. And I think the closer Eurovision show became more popular with the voting system because of that. That you're waiting up till the end to find out. Then I also think that the stage design was fine, personally, but I think it needs to be more precise. I.e., maybe less crazy dancers going on, less lights, something. Because when you start seeing the crazy lights and shows and settings, and it's like, then you're suddenly wondering if you're actually at a real concert and not a song contest. Because it kind of takes away from the contest about songs, and it makes it more like a performance show. And then there was one other thing. Oh, what was it? This bothered me during the whole contest. This was supposed to be our version of Eurovision, and it didn't feel Eurovision-y. That's my problem. I get it's supposed to be an Americanized version, and it's not going to be perfectly Eurovision, but something was missing. It just didn't feel like it was Eurovision. In the whole grand scheme of things, it may have been down to how many commercials there was, but some of it just didn't feel right either. It just, you had your oddity songs like New Boot Goofin' and From La Fincata. You had those, which were your oddity songs, and $1 Million Smoothies, for example. But then you had just had states and territories whose songs who came and just quickly faded out of mind and memory. So, what can we do to fix it? And also the ratings, by the way, the last episode, the ratings were on huge decline until the finales hit from episode 1. The final episode had 197 million, but that was not a lot. So I'm worried about there might not be a second season, when I do believe there should be a second season with improvements. So, talking about my complaints, what can they do to improve? Cut down the commercials. Shorten the show's runtime to either an hour or an hour and a half, or cut the commercials out entirely and leave it as an hour and a half show, or move the focus to the song, the author, the songwriters, the composers. I didn't mention this, but I thought some of the postcards or the things where they introduced the artist and where they were going were too long. They can cut those down, and maybe make those interviews or something. And I would think to make it more Eurovision-y, the qualifiers should be actually done at the state level. Each state should have their own version of like Mellow Festival, which is like the Swedish version of their Keats for the song, and could do it that way for each state and territory. That way they can send a song representative, and maybe we don't even hear about them until later. Would be a way to fix it. I also think maybe toning down the number of people on stage would also help, i.e. maybe limiting the number of dancers and extras to maybe 4 or 5 unless members of a band. And also cutting out pre-recorded vocals. This is a Eurovision rule that is very popular with their songs, and I think it would actually work better because it was obvious in some cases that they were singing to their already pre-recorded vocals. Like Alexa, for example. It was obvious. And it made it sound like it was American Idol than Eurovision Song Contest, or American Song Contest in this case. So I think with those changes, plus not putting it up against American Idol, which is something they did here, which was stupid. NBC, get it right. Do not put it up against American Idol. I think the show can be a success. It can be improved. And might even do better. But anyway, that was my thoughts and opinions and lessons I've learned from watching the American Song Contest 2022. And if you'd like to catch up, hear my other opinions about all the songs and what I thought about it at the time, check out the playlist of Nothing Nothing Reports on the American Song Contest 2022. And with that, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again on whatever my next coverage is at this point. Probably nothing for a while now until I update my record collection. But hey.